8 in the evening. You're on the couch. You've been scrolling for the fourth hour straight, and you're still tired. Like you didn't do anything, yet it feels like a second shift. Then you go to bed, and tomorrow it's the same thing. And the day after, and next week. The average person loses about 3 hours every evening exactly like this. 15 hours a week. 650 hours a year. That's almost a full month of your life, awake. And all of this gets called by one word, rest. The catch is that the brain isn't resting during these hours. Today we'll break down why that happens, and what to actually do so your evenings start working for you. According to a 2024 survey, the average person spends 5 hours and 16 minutes per day on a smartphone. That number grew by 14% in a single year. Most of those hours don't fall on work or on the commute. They fall on the evening, the window between coming home and going to bed. That window, 3 or 4 hours, now goes where half a morning used to go. 48% of phone unlocks happen for no reason at all. No message, nothing to check. The hand just reaches. Researchers call this scrolling by muscle memory, not a choice, an autopilot. And that autopilot averages close to 300 unlocks a day. Each one takes 2 or 3 minutes. Add it up, and the evening is gone. And here's where it gets strange. If you measure how someone feels after 2 hours of that kind of rest, you get a paradox. They didn't rest. Data from experience sampling. That's when participants get short surveys throughout the day asking them to rate their state in real time. Shows that passive screen time gives the lowest scores on satisfaction and meaningfulness across all evening activities. Lower than cooking, lower than exercise, lower than conversation, lower than reading a paper book, sometimes even lower than cleaning. The second strange thing follows from this. Most people feel the phenomenon, but can't explain it. In the morning they say, I didn't sleep well, even though they slept 8 hours. The real issue isn't the amount of sleep. It's what came before sleep. An evening spent on a smartphone doesn't let the brain pass through the physiological slow-down phase. The body falls asleep, but doesn't enter deep sleep in the first third of the night. And that's the part that matters most for recovery. So the picture looks weird. Time is there, 3 hours. Input gets spent, phone in hand. Output is empty. Tiredness doesn't go. Pleasure is small. No energy added for tomorrow. Something is broken here. And it's not broken in one person. It's a mass phenomenon, new for our species. 20 years ago, this problem at this scale didn't exist. Today, it's affecting billions of people simultaneously. The main question is what the brain is actually waiting for in the evening, and why what we give it consistently misses. Around 6 or 7 in the evening, a cascade kicks in. Cortisol, the hormone that kept you alert from morning, starts dropping. This is programmed by the circadian rhythm, the main internal timing mechanism. By night, cortisol should fall close to 0, otherwise a person can't fall asleep. In parallel, another substance accumulates, adenosine. It's a byproduct of neuron activity throughout the day. The more the brain has worked, the more there is. By evening, the concentration is at its peak, and adenosine acts on the prefrontal cortex, the same part you use to solve problems at work. It acts as a suppressor. The prefrontal cortex is the area above your eyes responsible for analysis, planning, and self-control. By evening, it is literally running on reduced power. In one of the most discussed studies, researchers analyzed over 1,000 parole decisions. In the morning, at the start of a session, judges granted prisoners' requests in roughly 65% of cases. By the end of the session, close to 0. Not because the prisoners were worse, because the judges ran out of capacity for difficult weighing, and the brain switched to the safest option, refuse. This phenomenon is called cognitive depletion. By 8 in the evening, you're in the same state. At this point, control passes to other brain structures, the basal ganglia. They sit deep in the forebrain and are responsible for automatic behavior. Everything you do without thinking, brushing teeth, the route to work, how you sit on a chair, runs through them. When the prefrontal cortex is tired, the basal ganglia take over. And they don't pick what's useful. They pick the most familiar pattern. What you did yesterday, and the day before, and last week. Then the habit loop kicks in. Cue, routine, reward. Cue, got home. Routine, picked up the phone, sat on the couch. Reward, a short dopamine spike from the first news post or short video. Dopamine here isn't pleasure, like people often say. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of anticipation and seeking. It literally teaches the brain do this again when you see the trigger. After a few repetitions, the loop closes. From there, it runs by itself. The speed at which this closes has been studied separately in neuroscience. 2 or 3 weeks of daily repetition of the same scenario are enough for the basal ganglia to start running it automatically. That's both bad and good news at the same time. Bad, because your current evening autopilot is already wired in. Good, because a new autopilot gets written exactly the same way, just with a different action. There's another detail that explains why it's so hard to stop in the evening. Short video and social media algorithms are built for maximum retention exactly at the moment of cognitive fatigue. The feed gives the brain unpredictable rewards. That's the strongest mode of conditioning known to psychology. The same principle works in slot machines. The prefrontal cortex could stop it, but it's offline. The basal ganglia can only repeat. The result is a closed loop. The more tired you are, the more you scroll. The more you scroll, the more tired you get. So here's the key idea. You're not lazy in the evening. You're on autopilot. The basal ganglia run a program you wrote yourself, reinforced from the outside every day by some of the strongest stimuli that exist. That program doesn't include recovery. It includes repetition. There's a separate field of research, work and organizational psychology, that has spent 20 years studying which evening actually restores a person and which doesn't. The main conclusion turns out to be surprisingly simple. There's one variable that predicts how much resource you'll have in the morning. It's called psychological detachment from work, not rest in the general sense. A specific state, you're mentally not at work, not thinking about it, not checking email, not rehearsing tomorrow's call in your head. Meta-analyses on this variable show that people with high evening detachment are more satisfied with life, have fewer burnout symptoms, and at the same time aren't less engaged at work during the day. So detaching in the evening doesn't make you a worse worker. The opposite. Now about the activity itself. A large body of experience sampling research showed something simple. All evening activities split into 2 types. Passive leisure, TV, scrolling, video games as background. Active leisure, anything that asks for at least minimal participation. Sport, conversation, cooking, hobby, walk, reading that requires attention. Passive leisure gives relaxation, but doesn't restore. Satisfaction is low, sense of meaning is low. Active, both indicators are higher. The paradox is that active leisure asks for slightly more energy at the start, but returns more than it took. Passive asks for less, but takes more than it gives. Combine the 2 findings, and you get a formula. Evening recovery equals not thinking about work plus doing something with minimal activity. Not one or the other. Both at once. If you think about work and scroll, tired. If you don't think about work and scroll, still less tired tomorrow than you could have been. If you don't think about work and cook, walk, or talk, that's the evening after which morning leaves you whole. There's another detail people often miss. Recovery depends not only on the activity, but on the sense of autonomy. When a person does something by choice rather than by obligation, the body responds differently. Parasympathetic nervous system activity, the side responsible for rest and digestion, goes up. Muscle tone drops. Breathing slows. This isn't poetry, it's measured by sensors. And here's the strange part. Housework done as obligation, washing dishes because I have to, barely restores. The same dishwashing done as a chosen meditative ritual does restore. Same physical process. Different outcomes. The sense of choice turns out to be that important. The third finding from the research is about duration. Evening recovery doesn't require many hours. Even 40 minutes of detachment plus active engagement gives a significant effect on next-day well-being, measured both through self-report and through biomarkers. An hour and 40 minutes is close to the optimum. After that, the returns grow slowly. So 3 or 4 hours on a phone isn't a lot of rest. It's a lot of something else. The idea of evening as a separate state isn't modern. In medieval craft guilds, after work there was a communal meal. Not passive, at the table, with conversation, with ritual. In monastic communities, there was an hour of silent prayer or reading. In ancient Greece, walks in gardens and conversations. Different names, different formats, but one structure. Evening isn't time left over after work. It's a separate phase of the day with its own rules and its own pace. Modern Japanese culture has a similar logic. Daytime Japan works for the collective, for the role, for for being part of the system. When evening comes, this changes. Late evening is almost the only window when a person can be themselves rather than a function. A quiet meal, a personal hobby, a bath ritual, a favorite show, but all of it with focus, not with defocus. It's not passive rest. It's switching the role. The boundary between I'm a worker and I'm a person. The common thread across these cultures is the presence of a boundary. Not a smooth slide from office to couch to phone to sleep, but a clear physical or ritual marker. A shower, changing clothes, a walk, a quiet meal, something that tells the brain, that's it. The day is over. Something else is starting. Without this boundary, the brain technically doesn't get the signal. It keeps running in operational readiness mode, just with a screen instead of tasks. And one more touch from history. Evening used to be necessarily social or cultural, never solitary consumption. Even monastic silent prayer was part of the shared discipline of the monastery. Even solitary reading was reading a shared canon, shared with others. The modern evening, with an algorithmic feed, works differently. Each person gets their own unique mix. Nobody watches the same thing as their neighbor. That means evening, for the first time in human history, has become a truly solitary phase. And biology didn't anticipate that variant. 40,000 years ago, evening looked different. Light went away. A small group of people gathered around a fire. One of the most valuable things for our species took place: safe social contact. Stories, information exchange, closeness of voices and bodies nearby. A warm rhythm. The brain back then developed a very specific reaction to evening. Lower combat readiness. Switch to warm, slow, rhythmic. Cortisol drops. Serotonin and oxytocin, the neurotransmitters of calm and connection, take the stage. This isn't poetry. It's biochemistry, programmed over millions of years. The modern evening with a screen does almost the opposite to this biochemistry. Bright blue light, signal that it's still day. Choppy rhythm of short videos, stress stimulation, constant switching. Anxious news, cortisol up, not down. Notifications, constant low-level alertness. No faces nearby. No voices nearby. No warm rhythm. You get a misfire. Biology asks for fire. Gets a flickering screen. Asks for voices. Gets the silence of the room and an algorithm. Asks for slowdown. Gets a non-stop stream. The body gets tired more than it should, because evening, instead of giving a down-regulating signal, gives an up-regulating one. And in the morning you have no resource, not because you slept little, but because what came before sleep was an anti-evening. This biology can't be tricked by willpower. It doesn't react to I decided to relax. It reacts to sensory signals: light, sound, rhythm, motion, presence of living faces. Whatever your environment, shows the brain at 8 in the evening. That's what it considers the current phase of the day. If it shows a bright screen and anxious news, it thinks the day continues. If it shows warm light, quiet sounds, a voice of a person nearby, or even a calm physical activity, it thinks evening has come. It's a small switch we got used to ignoring. And meanwhile, that switch is the one that decides whether you wake up whole or scattered tomorrow. 6 concrete steps, all grounded in data. Don't do everything at once. Take one this week. Let's go. Step 1. Rewrite the trigger. The habit loop hangs on one link: what you do in the first minutes at home. Right now, it's probably the phone. Replace it. The most powerful change is the first 7 minutes without a screen. Change clothes. Drank water. Looked out the window. Talk to a person nearby. You don't need 7 hours of a different evening. You need 7 minutes of a different start. After that, the basal ganglia will redraw everything themselves, but only if the first step is the same every day. The main trick here is to remove the trigger from sight. If the phone lies on the threshold in the hallway and not in the jeans pocket, and you walk from the door to the kitchen for water, the loop doesn't start. The basal ganglia don't see the cue and calmly hand the wheel back. Step 2. One if then plan. A 2006 meta-analysis with 8,500 participants and 94 independent studies showed the following. A goal stated in the form if such situation, then such action raises the chance of execution by roughly 1.5 times. The effect is called implementation intention. Not I'll spend less time on the phone, but if I sit on the couch and see the phone in my hand, then I put it back in the hallway. Specific cue. Specific action. One plan a week, no more. Step 3. One active block. Not evening as free time, but 20 to 40 minutes of one specific active thing. Anything with skill and rhythm. Cooking, walking, sport, conversation with someone close, reading a paper book, a musical instrument, any hobby. One rule: it has to ask at least minimal involvement from you. According to experience sampling data, that's exactly the condition for recovery. Step 4. Psychological detachment. Take the work email and work messenger off the main smartphone for the evening. Not silence. Specifically cutting off access. If work tries to come in and you don't let it, the brain learns fast. There's no work in the evening. If sometimes it still wins, the brain learns the opposite. Work is always here. Never let go. Detachment scores in research are influenced most by exactly these technical boundaries. Step 5. 1 transition ritual. Between coming back from work and evening, there must be a short physical boundary. A shower, changing clothes, a 5-minute walk around the house, a cup of tea in silence. This isn't a trendy life hack. It's the structure used by medieval craftsmen, by monks, and by modern Japanese. Without it, the brain doesn't get the signal. That's it. The work phase is over. With it, it does, and switches by itself. Step 6. Set a ceiling on the passive. Not a ban. Bans on evening scrolling fail for almost everyone. Deprivation gives a relapse in 2 or 3 days. But a limit works. 1 hour of a series in the evening, fine. 20 minutes of scrolling after dinner, fine. Beyond that, different mode. Not passive guilt, but a clear boundary. The limit can be set technically. The built-in screen timer in any modern smartphone does this for free. 40% of people who turn it on actually cut their evening screen time in the first 2 weeks. It's not magic. It's just a boundary that's hard to cross by inertia. Step 7. A bonus. 1 live contact a week in the evening. Not a call. Not a message. Face-to-face. Dinner with a friend. An hour with someone close. A walk with a neighbor. The biology we discussed above, serotonin, oxytocin, slowed breathing, dropped cortisol, gets activated best by the live presence of another person. It's the most effective known way to close the day, and one of the most forgotten in modern city life. 1 such evening a week has a noticeable influence on well-being during the other 6 days. According to large reviews, stronger than most individual relaxation practices. And one last small thing. Don't expect an effect on day 1. The basal ganglia rewrite an autopilot in 2 or 3 weeks. That's not fast, and it's not a sentence. It's a window. You just need to repeat one new start every evening for 14 to 21 days consistently. After that, the new autopilot becomes as familiar as the old one. In a month, the first move when you come home will no longer be the phone. It'll be the new thing you chose. Without effort. The basal ganglia will still do their job, just on a new program. And one more thing worth keeping in mind. Don't try to remove all the passive from the evening at once. The goal isn't for every evening to be packed and useful. The goal is for the evening to be restorative. And restoration is a mix. An hour active, an hour calm, a bit of empty space, maybe an hour of a series. Structure beats prohibitions. Clear beginning, clear middle, clear end. Not whatever happens, but here's how it works for me every day. Then the brain gets predictability, and on top of predictability, it builds recovery. This is one of those cases where the evening after work decides the next day more than the work itself does. Cortisol, adenosine, basal ganglia, dopamine, the habit loop. The biology of evening was prepared over millions of years, and it's not its fault that the modern screen breaks it. The autopilot is at fault, not you. And the good news is that the autopilot can be rewritten. Not in a day, not in a week, but it can. And the effect of that rewrite stacks. 1 new evening a week is 52 restorative evenings a year. Every day that starts with resource is a plus to work, to relationships, to focus, to whatever you actually want from your life. Evening isn't the leftover of the day. It's the lever through which everything else changes. If this topic was useful, subscribe. The channel is about productivity and effectiveness, not at the level of generic advice, but at the level of what's actually been tested in research. If you want more methods for working with attention, habits, recovery, and focus, there will be plenty here. See you in the next video.